8. The Hornets Nest. Dubbed the Hornets Nest by NATO, the Vilyachinsk naval base is home to Russia's Pacific Fleet of submarines. It's located on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the country's Far East region, where those with permission to enter must pass through multiple secure checkpoints starting more than an hour's drive away. The Hornets Nest operates in nearly year-round frigid conditions. Established in August of 1938, it was home to some of Russia's first ever diesel-powered submarines. During the Cold War, the construction of submarines and operations at the base was supported by a closed town called Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky 50. The town's existence and its current name Vilyachinsk were revealed on January 4, 1994, after the fall of the Soviet Union. Since 1998, the Hornets Nest has been home to the Strategic Submarine Ballistic Nuclear Squadron, or the SSBN for short. It also houses numerous cruise missile submarines, known as SSGs and SSGNs. The base has undergone extensive upgrades in recent years and is still in the process of being updated and expanded. Included among the plans are the construction of reinforced concrete shelters for housing submarines, ensuring protection from a potential attack and the ability to rapidly carry out repairs. There are also plans to build docks that are designed for quickly loading torpedoes and missiles. 7. Search for the Titanic. Former U.S. Navy commander and oceanographer for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Robert Ballard, famously discovered the RMS Titanic wreck in 1985, after many had tried and failed for decades to locate the sunken ship. But little did anyone know at the time, the discovery was made at the tail end of a top-secret naval mission that Ballard carried out as part of the deal that helped him obtain the funding for the Titanic search. Ballard first asked the military to pay for the submersible technology he needed for his search in 1982. The Navy agreed, in exchange for Ballard agreeing to photograph the wrecks of the U.S. submarines USS Thresher and USS Scorpion. Both vessels sank in the North Atlantic during the 1960s, and if Ballard finished the assignment early, he could go ahead and look for the Titanic, which the Navy didn't expect him to find. But when he successfully located the downed ship, the widespread press coverage made the military nervous that people, particularly the Soviets, might find out about Ballard's visits to the Thresher and Scorpion. However, there was so much excitement about the Titanic discovery that few seemed to question whether Ballard's mission had any other objectives. And any suggestion or questioning of that nature was squashed early on by the military. But the true goal of the operation was finally declassified and announced to the public in 2018. 6. The mission to capture Alex Saab. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is a highly controversial figure. Many think of him as a dictator, and his name has essentially become synonymous with corruption. He's been widely blamed for mismanaging Venezuela's years-long economic crisis. A Colombian businessman named Alex Saab was suspected of brokering economic deals to help keep Maduro's government afloat. In 2020, U.S. attorneys filed laundering charges against Saab, and Interpol issued a wanted notice. Saab was subsequently arrested in June in the West African island of Cape Verde, where his private plane had stopped to refuel while en route to Iran. American officials requested Saab's extradition to the U.S., while Saab's lawyer and the Venezuelan government fought tooth and nail against it. Then, in November 2020, the U.S. Navy deployed the cruiser USS San Jacinto off Cape Verde to prevent Venezuelan and Iranian officials from breaking Saab out of jail and taking him where it would be much more difficult, if not impossible, to extradite him. It was just one of the measures former U.S. President Donald Trump took in his efforts to address the ongoing chaos in Venezuela. The secret deployment of the warship was also just one of many things Trump did that were met with widespread criticism and disapproval from the American public. Saab remained jailed in Cape Verde for over 15 months, while the U.S. fought against various courts to get him extradited. Finally though, in October 2021, the extradition was granted, and Saab was brought to the U.S. to face money laundering charges. Court documents revealed that Saab had become an informant for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration back in 2018. And in May 2019, he missed a deadline to turn himself into American authorities for charges he faced, effectively ending his relationship with the DEA. He remains jailed in Miami while his legal issues get sorted out, and his continued detainment remains highly controversial among human rights activists who've accused US officials of putting his life in danger by denying him adequate health care. 5. Operation Ivy Bells. During the 1970s, American intelligence officials learned about the existence of a Soviet underwater communications cable in the Sea of Okhotsk. Wanting to learn more about the USSR's submarine and missile technology, the US Navy, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Agency underwent a joint mission to tap the top-secret cable. In order to do so, they had to bypass the multitude of security devices and protocols that the Soviets had implemented to protect their operations from intruders and spies. The top-secret mission, codenamed Operation Ivy Bells, began in October 1971. And to prevent the project from being discovered, the US government funded the mission by secretly diverting money for it from another project. A specially modified submarine called the USS Halibut snuck into the Sea of Okhotsk, where divers located the cable at a depth of 400 feet. Then they installed a large listening device, which was designed to detach from the cable if it was raised for repairs. Every month, divers retrieved the recordings from the listening device and replaced them with blank tapes. The recordings were turned over to NSA personnel, who quickly discovered by listening to the tapes that the Soviets were supremely confident in the cable's security. To maintain its cover story, the US military claimed that it had entered Soviet waters to recover debris from a destroyed Soviet anti-missile submarine for the sake of developing countermeasures. Teams were actually sent to do this, but there was obviously a lot more going on in the Sea of Okhotsk than anyone outside of the mission was unaware of. But the operation came crashing down after an NSA veteran named Ronald Pelton sold information about the tapped cable to the KGB in an effort to repair his ravaged personal finances. The Soviets then retrieved the listening device, which has been on display at the Great Patriotic War Museum in Moscow since 1999. Do you think there are secret missions still being carried out by the world's governments that we'll find out about 20 years from now? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, subscribe. Now, on to number 4. 4. The USS Sea Wolf. After the success of Operation Ivy Bells, American intelligence officials continued to tap Soviet communications cables throughout the rest of the Cold War. One such mission was carried out in 1981 by the 337-foot USS Sea Wolf. It was an old submarine, and the constant headache of keeping it operational dragged down the crew's morale. According to rumors, crew were so sick of maintaining the aging vessel that they used marijuana between missions in an attempt to get themselves kicked off the job. While trying to install a listening device on a cable, the submarine encountered a severe typhoon. The conditions were so extreme that the Sea Wolf was unable to escape the storm's forces, even at steep depths. It became embedded in the seafloor, causing a part called the reactor heat exchanger to become clogged with sand. While fighting to free itself from the bottom of the sea, the vessel ripped free from part of its underbelly, leaving interior parts free to clank around and bang against the hull. It made enough noise for the Soviets to detect the Sea Wolf's presence, but luckily the submarine managed to limp into international waters and back to its home port. As a result, it received the Navy Expeditionary Medal for its service in the mission. Mechanically speaking, the vessel was on its last leg, but it was fixed up and sent on another handful of deployments before finally being decommissioned in 1987. It was then dismantled and scrapped a decade later. 3. Navy SEAL rescue via USS Bainbridge. In 2009, 4 Somali pirates boarded an American container vessel called the Maersk Alabama. It was the first flagship that was owned by the US to be boarded by pirates in 2 centuries. After failing to seize control of the ship, 3 of the pirates left in a motorized lifeboat, taking the vessel's captain Richard Phillips with them as a hostage. They hoped to use Phillips as a bargaining token in exchange for the return of the 4th pirate, who was captured by the Maersk Alabama's crew. The U.S. Navy missile destroyer USS Bainbridge responded to the ship's mayday calls, while 6 SEAL Team 6 members flew 8,000 miles from Virginia to the Somali coast. Upon their arrival, they parachuted onto the Bainbridge under the cover of darkness. The pirates insisted that they were intent on navigating the lifeboat to shore, even if it meant risking their lives. But a highly skilled negotiator managed to talk them into holding off on the plan by making them think that they'd come ashore on territory controlled by a rival clan. Meanwhile, the negotiator persuaded the pirates to let the crew of the Bainbridge attach a tow cable to the lifeboat due to worsening weather. After hooking the cable up, the Bainbridge began pulling the lifeboat closer at a very slow speed so that the pirates wouldn't notice. Then, as the standoff dragged on overnight and into the next day, everyone involved got increasingly stressed out. Captain Phillips tried escaping the lifeboat and got into a scuffle with the pirates, who were extremely irritable because they'd run out of the cat leaves they were chewing to ward off seasickness. When one of the pirates fired a shot during the struggle with Phillips, the SEALs finally decided that it was appropriate to take lethal action. Making sure not to strike Phillips, 3 SEAL snipers waited for their opportunity to get a clean shot at all 3 of the pirates, and in the end, they successfully killed all 3. Phillips was also rescued with no American blood shed. 2. Project Aoran. In April 1968, a Soviet submarine called K-129 sank at the seafloor off Hawaii, taking all 98 crewmen on board with it. After weeks of searching for the wreck, the USSR gave up on finding it. But several months later, the US Navy launched a mission to find and photograph K-129, and it was codenamed Operation Sand Dollar. It took just 3 weeks for a team to locate the downed sub at a depth of roughly 16,000 feet. 2 years later, in 1970, American defense officials concocted a secret plan called Project Aoran to recover the vessel. It was the deepest and one of the most expensive and complicated intelligence missions the US had ever undertaken, coming at a cost of roughly $800 million. And to put that number into perspective, it would be more than $4 billion in modern currency. The operation was carried out using a vessel called the Hughes Glomar Explorer. And to conceal the true nature of the project, the government pretended that the ship was going to be used for mining. The team recovered 2 torpedoes, various pieces of equipment, and several logbooks and codebooks that the CIA was undoubtedly happy to get their hands on. They also found the remains of 6 of the crew members who died in the disaster and gave them a proper burial at sea with military honors. Then, in 1975, Time magazine published an expose about the government's true intentions with the mission, despite the CIA's best efforts to squash the story. The agency remains tight-lipped even after the article came out. Several participants have given interviews over the years, but the exact details of what the mission uncovered are unclear to this day. 1. Operation Nifty Package. Relations between US leaders and Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega were strong for much of his rule, which lasted from 1983 to 1989. But the relationship soured when American officials learned that Noriega was involved in drug trafficking and was sharing US intelligence information with Cuba. When Noriega failed to resign, the American military invaded Panama in December 1989 in a mission codenamed Operation Just Cause. Their first objective, known as Operation Nifty Package, was to capture Noriega, who'd taken refuge at the Vatican Embassy. During the first hours of the mission, Navy SEAL teams were tasked with disabling Noriega's private jet and destroying his heavily armed gunboat, the Presidente Porras. While one team got to work shooting a rocket into the aircraft, another team ventured out on Zodiac boats to a location that wasn't far from Noriega's vessel. Using Draeger rebreathers, which don't give off exhalation bubbles like standard diving equipment, 4 divers approached the boat from 450 feet away. Working in pairs, they attached explosives to the vessel, and as they were swimming away, Panamanian guards spotted them and began shooting. The divers took cover under a pier and were still hiding there when the explosives detonated. Luckily though, They made it back to safety while narrowly avoiding the path of a large Panamanian boat, and were able to confirm that the Presidente Porras had been successfully blown up. Because storming the Vatican embassy would have violated international diplomatic law, soldiers instead surrounded the property and urged the Vatican to give Noriega up. The Vatican initially refused, and for the next 10 days, the Americans blared rock and roll on huge speakers from right outside the property, hoping to essentially drive Noriega crazy and push him into surrendering. Then, to make the situation even more maddening, they revved vehicle engines and used a nearby field as a helicopter landing pad. After another 3 days, embassy personnel were so irritated by the constant noise that they complained to US President George H.W. Bush. They also began trying to convince Noriega to surrender, and whatever they said to persuade him worked, because 7 days later, the deposed dictator exited the embassy and was taken into custody without incident by US paratroopers. What other secret military missions would you like us to cover in a future video? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see ya in the next one. Bye!